Come back to those nights, my horror night.
Welcome to the last video store. I'm your host, Bud Haddonfield, and this is the YouTube show where I recommend the good, the bad, and ugly of horror movies. I recently went and watched the new Dracula with my wife in theaters, and I liked it. It was pretty good. It had somewhat of a different take on the Dracula story, but that's okay because it's cool to add things and pretty much make it your own. I'm not going to get into it about the director's backstory and whatnot. I'm not even going to talk about it. I'm just focusing on the movie. My wife, she had started watching some videos on it on TikTok, and she had got excited. Of course, I jumped to the opportunity, number one, to go watch a movie with her because I love little date nights and whatnot. But we got to go watch a horror movie and a Dracula movie in theaters, so that's always fun. So the reason behind this episode, last year I had did a video which was pretty much the many faces of Frankenstein or Frankenstein's monster, where I discussed all the movies that featured Frankenstein's monster or somewhat of a rendition of it, and I thought it was pretty successful. I enjoyed making it, and I wanted to do the same thing with Dracula. Not vampires, because of course there's so many damn vampire movies out there. I would be here all night talking about them. But I just wanted to go grab more than a handful, but a good bit of movies that featured Dracula or Dracula-type characters. So Dracula was a novel that came out, I believe, in the late 1800s. It was written by Bram Stoker, and it was adapted for the first time, I believe, 1922, which was the original Nosferatu, and I'm going to get to it when I touch on Nosferatu. But it was pretty much made famous in the 1930s when Universal had did it, and like I said, 1931 with Bela Lugosi. Bela had portrayed Dracula in the stage play, and of course when he made the movie it was pretty much its own thing. This came out, or this was being filmed the same time as the Spanish version, which I'm going to get to it there. But the Dracula mythos right here, number one, he didn't have fangs. The book, he talked about him having sharp teeth, kind of Nicolas Cage's rendition from, I don't know why I can't think of the movie. Well, Renfield. I'm going to talk about it when we get to Renfield. But he didn't have the widow's peak. He did have some of the mannerisms that's still there today. But overall, this was the first time we actually seen Count Dracula. I really love this one. This one pretty much set a precedent for the majority of the vampire movies to come. Like I said, it's based on the source material from the novel. And the original Dracula, yes, it's almost 100 years old, but still check it out if you haven't seen it. It's absolutely amazing. So like I said before, when they was filming the American version with Bela Lugosi, they was also doing the Spanish version. They would film the American by day, Spanish by night, same sets, same costumes, but different actors and directors and whatnot. And this one is very similar, but even this one too is a very awesome movie. You can find this one. You can get it on Amazon Prime right now and Voodoo Fandango. Finally there, but to get the stream of it. But anytime you get a pack of the Dracula Blu-ray or DVD, the Universal, you can get the Spanish version. And I highly recommend the Spanish version because it's just as great, if not better. So the first actual sequel, we have Dracula's Daughter. And Dracula's Daughter was pretty much what Abigail was, if you remember that movie from the last couple years. And that started off as a remake, and it pretty much stuck close to it, but I'm not going to include that in this list. So, from Dracula's Daughter to Son of Dracula, we get Lon Chaney Jr., pretty much he as the Son of Dracula. This one was in the 1940s, and this one was fun. I love all the Universal monster movies. So, the last actual of the Dracula movies was House of Dracula. John Carradine had portrayed it in this one. If you don't know who that is, he was the father of the one that was in Kill Bill and Revenge of the Nerds, all of the Carradine brothers. So, this one was fun as well. I'm trying to stack them because I have a lot to talk about with these. So when we start getting into the Frankenstein movies, it was pretty much the first time you ever had a monster mash or like a versus collaboration, whatever the hell it is. And he is in House of Dracula, again, played by, I believe it's John Carradine again. So when you think of Dracula, you automatically think of Bela Lugosi, but Bela Lugosi did not portray Dracula except just the original one. And the only time he ever came back was in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, which was pretty cool. It was cool to see him come back after a while. So that's it with the original Universal Monster movies. I'm sorry if I'm boring you with this episode. We do have a little 1979 Dracula's Last Rites. This one was a whole lot of fun. I would like to see this one get a Blu-ray. If you haven't seen this one, there is a cheaper DVD release. Like I say, cheaper in quality when it got pressed on the DVD. But this movie's fun and it's out of print. But you can find it on Amazon streaming right now. So there's a couple that I'm trying to track down right now. In the 50s, you had Dracula in Istanbul, and that one's pretty much the first time Dracula had fangs. From there, Hammer Horror they were pretty much remaking or doing their own version of the Universal Monster movies. And in the late 50s, we got the Hammer Dracula movies, which had Christopher Lee. These was a whole lot of fun. They might be boring to some people, but if you grew up watching them, you're going to love them because there's a lot of great filmmaking and storyline that went into these movies. The first one, again, Horror Dracula. Peter Cushing played Professor Van Helsing. We got the original sequel, which this one didn't feature Dracula, but it's called Brides of Dracula. We have the more popular Dracula, Prince of Darkness, where Christopher Lee came back. We have Dracula Has Risen from the Grave. Taste the Blood of Dracula. Scars of Dracula. Dracula AD 1972, which this one was kind of a weird one, but it wasn't too bad. We have the Satanic Rites of Dracula. And the only other sequel that Christopher Lee was not in, and that is The Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires. So, continuing with Hammer Horror, they did another one, Countess Dracula, which it was Ingrid Pitt, like a female version. They had some lesbian vampire movies from the 70s and 60s and whatnot, and they were a whole lot of fun. So yeah, definitely check those out as well. Peter Cushing portrayed him in Tender Dracula. Christopher Lee actually came back for Dracula in Son, which is different storyline and whatnot, but that one was a whole lot of fun. And we have Count Dracula, which this one was a Jess Franco movie. And what's his damn name? I can't think of his name. Klaus Kinski, who portrays Nosferatu in the Werner Herzog from the late 70s, which we're going to get to that one. So let me stamp these down, and I'll pick up another stack, and we'll continue with Dracula. All right. So in the 70s, Mel Brooks did his spoof of Young Frankenstein, and in the 90s, he did Dracula Dead and Loving It with Leslie Nielsen. It was mostly spoofing Bram Stoker's Dracula that had came out a couple years before that, but that was a whole lot of fun. We have Love at First Bite, which was a George Hamilton comedy from the late 70s. This one went too bad. This pack has Dracula in Love. This one was outright. We have Mama Dracula, which was a Louise Fletcher movie from the late 80s. We have Fiancé of Dracula, which is also known as Dracula's Fiancé, which was a Jean Rollin vampire movie. If you haven't seen none of those ain't bad. They're French. They're in the French language, but they're a lot of fun as well. So we get some cheesy Dracula versus Frankenstein. They have alternate titles, and I'll get to that in another episode. But we have another rendition, Dracula versus Frankenstein, and these both have gotten the Blu-ray treatment since then. So I'm not trying to make a noise. We have Dracula's Curse. We have another but different Dracula's Curse. And then Bram Stoker's Dracula's Guest, which has, what's his damn name? Andrew Bryanowski, who played Leatherface in the remake sequel. We have an Al Adamson, Dr. Dracula. And the more famous 70s Count Dracula, which was a BBC version. like the British Broadcasting Network, British Broadcasting Channel, not the other BBC. And then we have Dracula in Vegas, which pretty much a vampire in Vegas, but I included it because it's the Dracula movies. So 2 stacks left. We have Zoltan, Hounds of Dracula, which is pretty much about Dracula's dogs. We have Rockula, which is a 80s comedy, and he raps and whatnot. It's not too bad. So when I did the Black Horror Movies Volume 1, I talked about both Blackula and Scream, Blackula Scream. We have Wes Craven's Vampire in Brooklyn, which is pretty much a modernized version of Dracula because it's pretty much the same story. We have the beloved Monster Squad, which I cannot talk about this movie enough. In the early 2000s, we had gotten pretty much the closest thing to a monster mash at the time, and it is Van Helsing. I'm surprised we didn't get any sequels. I guess it didn't make too much money at the box office, but this one was a whole lot of fun. So going back to the 70s, we've gotten Frank Langella's Dracula, which this one's actually a pretty cool adaptation of itself. It's late 70s, very eerie, and it's definitely worth a watch. We have a Dan Curtis's made-for-TV movie. He was doing a lot of stuff, like Trilogy of Terror. I could just keep going with this, but we got Dan Curtis's Dracula, which Jack Palin's Curly from City Slickers. He plays him in that one. And then Wes Craven produced some in the early 2000s with Dracula 2000s, and it had 2 sequels that followed. These wasn't too bad. They were kind of a stretch, but good adaptations in its own right. And then we got Dracula 3000, which this one's kind of dog shit, but we got Coolio and Debo and Erica Laniak. This one takes place in space. We have The Return of Dracula, and it has Bela Lugosi, but it's not related to the Universal vampire movies. It's Return of Vampire. There's another one that I'm going to get to, which is Return of Dracula, but this one is Return of the Vampire. We have Dracula Untold, which again, they tried jumpstarting this with like I, Frankenstein, and I didn't care for this one too much, but I guess it deserves another viewing from me. And like I talked about earlier, we have Renfield. This was fun. I guess it didn't do too well in box office either because nobody really talks about this movie. But Nicolas Cage did pretty good with it. He looks very similar to Bela Lugosi, but he has the teeth like in the novel, whereas just the sharp teeth, there's no protruding fangs. In the 70s, we had some Andy Warhol movies that were directed by Paul Morrissey, and it's Blood of Dracula, and he had also did like Feast of Frankenstein, if I'm not mistaken. So one last stack, and I'll stop talking. So we get Billy the Kid versus Dracula, which John Carradine plays Dracula in this one. It was a cool little Western. We get David Niven. He was in the original Pink Panther movies. He was in Murdered by Death, which was a cool little Neil Simon movie, and it's old Dracula. Of course, he pops up in Blade Trinity, which is probably the coolest thing about Blade Trinity. We get Count Dracula's Great Love, which was had Paul Nash in it, so that one's really cool. In I believe the 90s, it was a very short-lived TV series, and it was Dracula the series. I was able to get volumes 1 and 2, but it didn't last too long. We have The Last Voyage of the Demeter, which is straight out of the Dracula novel, and this pretty much just focuses on the ship ride from Romania, Transylvania to where he went for his voyage. Okay, so let's back this up a little bit. So when I was telling you earlier about Nosferatu, they had made this version, I want to say it was 1922, and this movie was sued. It was pretty much all copies were supposed to be destroyed, and this was like the closest thing to an illegal movie. They changed a lot of the names, but basically it's pretty much the same story. Instead of Count Dracula, we have Count Orlok, and Nosferatu, which I think it means like the death plague or something like that. And it's pretty much Dracula with a few little changes out in it, whatnot. So in the 1970s, it was remade. Werner Herzog had remade it with Klaus Kinski. I'm not going to get into it about him, but he did some pretty dark shit too. But this one wasn't too bad, and it had a loose remake, which was Nosferatu in Venice, or also Vampire Venice. And then, year before last, it was remade with Bill Skarsgård. So, yeah, fun times. So in the 1990s, we get Bram Stoker's Dracula. This one went bad. It was very similar to the novel, some things that the other movies didn't pick up, but it was fun. It was a good little movie, and this is what kind of heavily influenced the new one. I believe we talked about the return of the vampire because Bela Lugosi's in it. That's why I included that one. But we also get the return of Dracula, which is a different, non-related movie, and that's pretty much it. Yes, there's some other ones out there. It's just the ones I couldn't think of off the top of my head. So I just wanted to do an episode talking about some Dracula-related movies that featured the Dracula or somewhat of a similar character. But that's it. I've been sick. You can tell in my voice. It's not there. But I enjoy doing this episode. And I like talking about horror movies and Dracula. So thank you for tuning in to the last video store. I'm your host, Bud Haddonfield. I hope y'all are enjoying life. Summer's coming up. We got a few weeks left of February. Of course, February being the smallest month of the year, it's almost over. But we got a lot of cool things in store. So I hope y'all survived Mardi Gras. If y'all down here in the Louisiana area, I'm so happy that it's over, and I hope it doesn't come back. But please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on next week's episode. And of course, I forget Dario Argento's, that goddamn glare, Dario Argento's Dracula 3D, which has Ruger Hauger. So if I got any more, it's just gonna have to make next episode. So thank you.
Michael Myers are the heroes of my past. Now the media is dying. Chucky and the zombies are all up in cemetery. So bring me back those. I wanna come back to those times when all movies were so scary. I blow a red light with the creatures of the night. I wanna come back to those times and kiss the pretty screen queen. I wanna come back to those